And we're back with the Daily Lock In. It's your main man, Norman Locke. And I'm with my guy, Dan Lusk, co-host of the Conduct Detrimental podcast. What's up, Dan?
Norm, it has been a minute. Always a pleasure to speak to you.
Yeah, it's been a while. The last time we talked, we had a lot of fun talking about just the puns and legals and sports. And then we had to, cover a little bit darker topic with Deshaun Watson, which I hate to say that we're back still talking about this topic right now today.
The truth is this case has gone on for, at this point, almost a year and a half. So some people would say, like, how is it taking so long? But the truth is litigation, right? The wheels of justice move very slowly. So it's not so crazy. But what is kind of interesting, Norm, we're continuing to have new complaints about a year and a half in, new parties being added. Not so typical from a high profile litigation like this, but happy to break it down with you.
So if I'm looking at the timeline, you have Deshaun Watson asked for a trade January 28th, 2021. March 16th, the first criminal lawsuit complaint that attorney Tony Busby filed. Now fast forward to this March, Deshaun Watson is a Cleveland Brown. He signed a $230 million fully guaranteed contract, the highest in NFL history. But the litigation isn't done. So I want to ask you, how are the Browns or the better question is, are the Browns in the clear for Deshaun Watson to play this season?
So that one I think is a definitive no. They're definitely not in the clear. And so we could say, I think the suspension, we'll say Goodell is going to make a suspension or a decision on the suspension, I think, by the summer. I think the goal is to have it in by the start of the season. So let's say somehow, right, and I think the odds are that Watson will receive some type of suspension. And Norm, to that $230 million contract, I think very suspiciously, interestingly, whatever way you want to call it, year one of that $230 million contract is only has a base salary of $1 million. You can ask yourself, why is he opting to get paid so little in year one? Because I think everyone expects some type of suspension in year one. So they can only really hit you for the amount of money you would have made during the games that you missed. And if you're only making $1 million for the year and the rest of the contract is backloaded, right? It's a smart move. So the other part of that too, Norm, which I'm sure we'll get into, is like, let's say he avoids a suspension on this go around and the NFL says, you know what, we're not going to suspend you, let's see what comes out. Keep in mind here, right? The trial in this case is not scheduled until after this year's Super Bowl. Or information could come out after the season is over, maybe after his suspension is served, and they want to tack on some additional time. So by no means are the Browns in the clear. So it's going to be a long road for Browns fans here.
Is there any way that, or is there any type of language maybe in the contract that, like you say, after this season and the lawsuits happen, and let's say it doesn't go in Deshaun Watson's favor, are they still on the hook to pay that guaranteed money, even though the contract will be, I guess, null and void because he will be in jail?
Yeah. So, I mean, here's where it gets interesting. So, Norm, I remember I was going on with you a bunch during that whole trade saga when he was maybe going to the Falcons and maybe going to the Panthers. So all these teams, right, and the Browns included, everyone said they did their due diligence on Deshaun Watson. They said, we looked into it. We did our different methods, whatever that meant. And at the end of the day, the Browns were the ones, I think everyone had trades on the table. So everyone did their due diligence. You asked me if the Browns have any outs in the contract. I mean, there is reports that the Browns have a way that's written into the contract that anything that was disclosed to them in writing beforehand, they can't void the contract on. Now, if something comes up that was not in writing, in theory, they potentially might want to void the contract. Here's the thing, though. If I was drafting that contract and I was Deshaun Watson's representatives, I would be very clear. Hey, maybe 23 lawsuits had been filed to that point, or maybe it was 22, is right around there. But I don't think he should have the contract voided for any type of, we'll say, massage-based incident. So ones that we know thus far, ones that might be kind of similar, but that haven't come out yet. I think that's most likely how the contract was drafted. And I will say, if you're the Browns, right, maybe you want to void the deal, right? You're so, that there's now, maybe by the time, the next week or so, we'll have 30 lawsuits. I don't know how many we'll get to. But at the end of the day, the Browns gave up 3 first-round picks
Right.
And unless something shady comes up with respect to the Texans, they've lost those 3 first-round picks. So if I'm the Browns, I'm hesitant to void the 230 million, and I've given up my 3 first-round picks. I think the Browns and Watson are in a marriage right now. I don't think the Browns are inclined to cut bait. Even if they could, I don't think they would at this point.
So, how some controversial people are saying, the NFL teams are putting this information out. They want Deshaun Watson to get suspended. They want the justice. But truly, it's in the Browns' best interest for this case to go in Deshaun Watson's favor just because of the points that you made. They're going to lose monetarily and they're going to lose in the future with the 3 first-round picks being gone. How does the Houston Texans look in this whole optics of the situation?
So you said something really interesting, right? Like, and I've had this thought. I don't know if I've shared it on any shows, but like the Browns don't have any incentive to like tank Deshaun Watson, right? Like they already gave up the 3 first-round picks. Even if they could get out from under the contract, it doesn't really make sense, and it would send really the wrong message to any player that would think of signing with the Browns as a free agent. So I don't buy those conspiracy theories. Um, there is a conspiracy theory that I'm more inclined to believe that involves the Houston Texans. How do you like that for a lead-in, Norm?
Okay.
So here's the thing, right? The new allegations that are coming out, the New York Times did a really big expose on Deshaun Watson. And if you ask me, Norm, I think it's possible that the New York Times found out information that the Cleveland Browns, that the Carolina Panthers, the New Orleans Saints, they might not have known. Because if we know, right, if the Browns know what we know today, I'd feel very weird about giving Deshaun Watson $230 million guaranteed, right? So my gut is that the New York Times found out some stuff that other people didn't know. And that doesn't surprise anybody, right? It's a journalistic endeavor. One of the things that they found out is that the Houston Texans, while Deshaun Watson was still a member of the team, there was a woman that had claimed on Instagram that she was going to kind of out Deshaun Watson and his like massage conduct. This is before the lawsuits, before everything else. So somehow the Houston Texans found out about it. And the next thing you knew, Deshaun Watson went to his locker and the head of security had placed a non-disclosure agreement in his locker.
Wow.
And Deshaun Watson, was given the messaging that was for any type of, if this would come up again, so to speak. So Watson has explained in his depositions now for this case what had gone on, and explained that he would give this NDA to, various female masseuses. So that begs the question, right? Did the Houston Texans know what was going on, right? Did they know what was going on this whole time? Why are they giving out NDAs? And if they knew, right, here's the $1 million question, maybe the $230 million question. Why didn't the Houston Texans suspend him at all on themselves for the 2021 season? And I can answer that. I give my best guess. I'm speculating a little bit. But if they would have suspended Watson, if they would have given him any discipline whatsoever during the 2021 season, that would have hurt Deshaun Watson's trade value. It would have hurt it tremendously. So I'm inclined to buy that conspiracy theory that the Texans did not know or claimed to not know what was going on until it was convenient, right? And now these stories tend to come out after the fact. So I think the Houston Texans, it's conspiracy theory, whether it's coming out in evidence during this case, whatever you want to say, it's looking like the Texans knew a lot more. We're now talking about what maybe the Browns could potentially do vis-a-vis the Texans. If it comes out that the Texans knew something and they did not disclose that to the NFL, did not disclose that to the Cleveland Browns during trade negotiations, I can't rule out any potential discipline on behalf of the Houston Texans. So that's what the Texans fans are looking at. They thought they were done with the Watson saga. They thought they got their 3 first-round picks and turned the page. No, there are reports that they're going to be brought into this lawsuit for maybe aiding the different conduct that occurred here.
Because what I'm failing to understand with the Cleveland Browns and the decision makers up there is what is the difference? Because as we started this discussion, litigation is going to take a while. The litigation from March 16, 2021 to March 16, 2022, nothing has changed. So I don't see why they felt the need, even though, like you say, the Houston Texans might have aided and abetted Deshaun Watson, helping him or facilitate or known things that maybe they didn't want to release to the media. The Browns probably know the same things, but I just don't see the difference if he's still going to be suspended or time is going to still be missed, whether he's on the exemption list or he doesn't play for 2 seasons. I just don't understand. And then, like you said, this lawsuit won't go to trial until after the Super Bowl, which still might pan out go to appeals court, still take another year, take 2 more years. I don't. How long is this going to be a topic in the media?
Well, what doesn't make sense, and I'm happy we're getting into this because I feel like the story's been going on for so long that a recap is really necessary here. Like, what has changed between March 2021 and today? The main thing is that he was not indicted by a grand jury, right? Criminal charges are very unlikely at this point. So that is a very big update, right? I think if criminal charges were filed, I don't think any team would touch him. I don't know why that necessarily makes a difference because the acts that allegedly occurred have not changed. These women are not recanting their stories. So I don't necessarily know why, somebody putting criminal charges on something changes the story. If there's 24 women, and now, I think 26 is the number that seems to be, coming down the pike, like 26 women say something, the optics are there, right? I don't think the optics are like tremendously worse if you have 26 women saying something and then there are criminal charges versus 26 women saying something, right? I think they're both pretty bad. What doesn't really make sense to me from a timing perspective, none of these acts have occurred since March of 2021. Like the acts are still what the acts are, alleged acts. I don't know why Watson wasn't, if we're talking about a suspension now, I don't know why he wasn't suspended at all for the 2021 season, right?
Correct.
People spoke to a lot of these individuals, over the past year, and I don't know, nothing has really changed, right? So the law might have changed a little bit. These cases are progressing. We've seen more depositions. The indictments didn't go forward. But I don't, it's very slow. Nothing stopped the NFL from issuing a suspension early and letting these cases play out in the background.
Correct.
What I think the NFL was hoping for, and they still might be, we'll see, is, maybe they were hoping that Deshaun Watson would settle these cases and then they could tie a neat bow on the civil case and they could issue some type of suspension. But the problem is, Norm, in a conversation you and I spoke a lot about, there's been reports that have come out that Deshaun Watson offered each of the women associated with the civil case $100,000. So do your math. That's roughly like $2 million, $2.5 million. The problem, and everyone in my reply saying Watson should just settle the cases, make this go away. The problem is, right, you went from 22 cases to 23 to 24 to 25, 26. If you settle the cases, what's not to say that another one is going to come forward, right?
Because if allegedly he's seen 66 women over a 17-month period, so it can go over 70 cases easily.
Right. And Watson was asked at his press conference last week, like, does that number sound right? And he gave kind of a sheepish grin and he said, well, I spoke to my attorneys. I'm not sure. Like, my read on it, right? I'm not on any inside information. The man just doesn't know. And can that shock you? 67 in a 17-month period. Unless he's keeping like an Excel spreadsheet, right? I'm not sure how he's supposed to know what's going through. So I think his attorneys, this is, again, my read on it, would probably a little frustrated that they can't pin down the exact numbers. But that's why this case is going on so long, because there's just a lot of moving parts. The criminal case, the NFL case, the civil case, now the Texans potentially being brought in, trade partners, different teams. So, we've seen so many different levels to this. It's like peeling back, the layers of an onion at a certain point.
Now, the last thing that crossed my mind, I thought about this the other day, was Robert Kraft. How does this situation differ from Robert Kraft and what his case was? He was up for a misdemeanor prostitution charge, if I'm not mistaken, that got thrown out magically. But what's the difference between Robert Kraft and the optics of Robert Kraft versus Deshaun Watson?
So, listen, the short answer is that one's an owner, one's a player. It's not a response I'm happy saying, but I think, that's the NFL. And it really came under fire about, I want to say 3 weeks ago at this point. Rusty Hardin, the lawyer for Deshaun Watson, kind of gave some, tongue-in-cheek interview on a local radio station. And it was really ill-advised comment, something that I have never heard a lawyer say before in a public comments, and I hope I never hear again. Rusty Hardin, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it's pretty close. He said it's not necessarily illegal to receive a happy ending at a massage, and it's only illegal if you get paid a little bit extra, or you pay a little bit extra, you give something else. And I'm like, I don't, this is a really odd thing for Rusty Hardin, Deshaun Watson's lawyer, to be saying. Like, is that the defense here? Is the defense here that that's what happened to Deshaun Watson? And then, like, we're very close to Robert Kraft territory.
And that's those comments made me think immediately of Robert Kraft.
Right. And then, the whole firestorm was like, okay, now that's your defense of the case. So, this is an important point here. Deshaun Watson was winning in the media. I'm not going to say the full media, but when I say winning, we live in a culture which basically like guilty until proven innocent.
Correct.
And that's what people viewed Watson as early on. But when there were these little wins, so and the avoidance of any type of indictment by the grand jury was very big, and everybody started to say, is there a way, right? And then the Cleveland Browns giving $230 million. Is there a way Watson just plays week one and this thing is in the past? And all of a sudden, very quickly, those comments, those quote unquote happy ending comments, really spun the case on its head. And then after that, you heard the 23rd, the 24th, and now maybe up to 26 cases, the Texans being brought in. So that's an example of how a lawyer can really make the story about him. And Rusty Hardin has handled a lot of high-profile cases, Adrian Peterson, Roger Clemens. But that one misstep, right, that getting into the lane of the Robert Kraft stuff, I think was very big, and it really quickly turned, whatever momentum Watson had gained, it turned it all right against him. So full 180. And to your question, I think that was a big misstep. I think everybody is unanimously on how did Robert Kraft get off so easy bandwagon, and then all of a sudden Rusty Hardin directed himself right in there. So I think that was definitely ill-advised, and I think he's tried to recant it to some extent, but I think the damage has been done.
This is, and now, I love talking to you, but I don't like talking about this subject, and we know that it has to play out in court. So this is probably going to be my last time really keeping up when an update, unless something major comes out, because what are we continually talking about? Like that's just my thing with this topic, because okay, so every media opportunity Deshaun Watson has at training camp, this is going to be the topic. Every time the Browns have a game, is this going to be the topic? When we know the trial doesn't start to after next year after the Super Bowl, so I'm just feeling as though that people are getting bored, and this is kind of like the clickbait thing to talk about when it comes to the Browns.
It's fair. And even me, I mean, I have this podcast, I cover it, almost every other week. We were talking on the show, like a little bit of Watson fatigue. And, there's certainly been some big updates recently, but the issue is, right, the NFL is kind of putting Watson in a tough spot. They're not issuing the suspension. It's kind of indefinite, right? I could tell you the wheels of justice move slowly, but that's not stopping the NFL. There's no reason he wasn't suspended. If they were going to suspend him this year, there's no reason why you didn't suspend him last year.
That's
And
what I just don't understand.
yeah, I don't think it's fair. I don't think the handling that the NFL, the slow process, I don't think it's been fair to Watson, but that's why I think people are getting fatigued with this.
Dan, I appreciate you coming in and come clarify things, all Deshaun Watson for the Cleveland Browns. Dan, why don't you tell everybody where they can get all things conduct detrimental?
Conduct Detrimental, the Sports Law Podcast. We are on all forums where you can hear a podcast, and I am on social media at Sports Law Lust. We cover Watson very close, but we go across the board, Norm, as you know. Some sports stories can be fun. This one is a little on the more serious side, but still an important story for us to cover.